I'm in section 2 of Solzhenitsyn's Gulag Archipelago, and he's talking about the emptying of whole groups of people, whole nations, into the prison camps that are collectively known as the Gulag. And he starts off in this section by talking about the fact that people are arrested on the basis of lists. In other words, the government has a list. You get on the list one way or the other. It could be you're an informant. It could be that they saw your name in the newspaper. It could be that you showed up for a rally. It could be something you even said casually and somehow word got back. Point is, you get on a list and then you're sort of done for. Arrested on the basis of lists. Free people were simply arrested and executed immediately. So some people didn't even make it to the Gulag. They're shot before they even get there. From January 1919 on, writes Solzhenitsyn, food requisitioning was organized and food collecting detachments were set up. They encountered resistance everywhere in the rural areas, sometimes stubborn and passive, sometimes violent. The suppression of this opposition and flood of arrests during the course of the next 2 years, not counting those who were shot on the spot. So, farmers who don't want to go along with collectivized farming is where you grow your crops and you turn them into the government. The government takes your crops and then they distribute it as they see fit. So if you resist this, you protest, you try to block what the government is doing, you'll be arrested, you'll be executed. Next, Solzhenitsyn talks about religious people. He goes, the root destruction of religion in the country, which throughout the 20s and 30s was one of the most important goals of the GPU-NKVD. The GPU-NKVD is an acronym for the government agencies, could be realized only by mass arrests of Orthodox believers. So think of this, what Solzhenitsyn's getting at. These are sort of the standard groups that get targeted, and somehow the religious believers find themselves in this. And it's kind of a good question as to why, because clearly the religious believers aren't mounting armed resistance. They don't pose a threat in that sense. But perhaps they pose a threat in positing a deity, a higher object of worship than the state. And this is monks and nuns, writes Solzhenitsyn, whose black habits had been a distinctive feature of old Russian life, were intensively rounded up on every hand, placed under arrest, sent into exile. They arrested and sentenced active laymen. And so they're just going after anybody who has a religious affinity. True, they were supposedly being arrested and tried not for their actual faith, but for openly declaring their convictions and bringing up their children in the same spirit. And then Solzhenitsyn ironically quotes a poet, as Tanya Kodkiewicz wrote, "You can pray freely, but just so God alone can hear." You're allowed to have faith, but you got to keep it to yourself. If you talk to people about it, if you post about it, if you preach about it, even if you raise your own children in that faith, that's not allowed. The faith has got to sort of stay within you and never, you might say, exit your lips. Now, this poet who sarcastically exposed the kind of strangeness of this government edict. You can pray by yourself, but not so anyone can hear. She gets 10 years prison time for these verses. A person convinced he possessed spiritual truth was required to conceal it from his own children. In the 20s, the religious education of children was a political crime under Article 5810. In other words, counter-revolutionary propaganda. And the only way out once you're arrested as a religious believer, says Solzhenitsyn, is you have to renounce your religion on religious charges. And one parent undertakes the sort of awful burden of renouncing the faith, but not renouncing the faith really, but it's like, I denounce my faith. Why? So I can now go home and look after the kids. So sometimes it's the dad who does that. Sometimes it's the mom. He goes, throughout all those years, women manifested great firmness in their faith. All persons convicted of religious activity received tenors, the longest term then given. So Solzhenitsyn puts this word tenor in italics. What does he mean? 10 years. A tenor is 10 years in incarceration. And then he says, in the 20s, waves appeared that were purely national in character. Now, what does he mean by national? Well, he's talking about nationalities. Different types of ethnic or social groups are collectively targeted. It's not that they're targeting this individual for that or another individual for. We're targeting groups and we're rounding them up as a group. In 1931, a grandiose trial of the Working Peasants' Party was being prepared on the grounds that they existed as an enormous organized underground force among the rural intelligentsia. Now, Solzhenitsyn goes on to say that first of all, this was a complete fabrication. There was no rural intelligentsia plotting against the government, but for whatever reason, the government targets these guys. And he says that they were accused of preparing to overthrow the dictatorship of the proletariat. At the trial, this Working Peasants' Party was referred to as if it was already well known and under detention. And then, says Solzhenitsyn, then all of a sudden, one lovely night, Stalin reconsidered. Stalin changed his mind. Why? Maybe we will never know. Did he perhaps wish to save his soul? Solzhenitsyn's here being ironic. I wouldn't say funny, but ironic in a bitter way. Did his sense of humor come to the fore? Was it all so deadly, monotonous, so bitter tasting? So in other words, was Stalin, is just worn down by all the misery of just arresting people upon people. So he just goes, you know what? I'll change my mind. Now, let's have a moment of levity. Let's let these guys go, if only as a joke. But then, says Solzhenitsyn, but no one would dare accuse Stalin of having a sense of humor. I mean, this guy, he doesn't need the relief of laughter. He doesn't mind being a dictator through and through. He goes, likeliest of all, Stalin simply figured out the whole countryside would soon die of famine anyway. So why go to all the trouble? And instantly the whole trial was called off. So here Solzhenitsyn is highlighting the completely arbitrary, lawless nature of the police state. The police state is a ruthless engine. They make lists, they arrest you, but they're not even consistent with all that. It's not even like, okay, you know what? We've got a system of harsh repression. We're going to carry it out even-handedly. Suddenly Stalin decides, well, I'm going to let these people go. So suddenly, they've all confessed to their crimes. So now they're allowed to repudiate their confessions. Their crimes are essentially overturned by government edict, and they are mysteriously exonerated. Debbie and I made a New Year's resolution to lose weight, and well, thankfully, PhD weight loss came to our rescue. Debbie's lost 24 pounds, I've lost 27, and you can see we're keeping it off. We're both on maintenance. The program is based on science and nutrition, no injections, no pills, no long hours in the gym, no severe calorie restriction, just good, sound, scientifically proven nutrition. It's really simple. They make it easy by providing 80% of your food at no additional cost, and they tell you when and what to eat. You can also do this without ever being hungry. The founder, Dr. Ashley Lucas, has her PhD in chronic disease and sports nutrition. She's also a registered dietitian. She helps people lose weight and, most important, maintain that weight loss for life. So if you're ready to take the step of losing weight like Debbie and I have, call PhD Weight Loss and Nutrition. Here's the number, 864-644-1900. You can also find them online at myphdweightloss.com. The number again to call, 864-644-1900.